Well, howdy, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We have a great show in store for you. We have Stephen Whitlow here from Clear Truth Media and cleartruthconference.com. He's got a big conference coming up that Pastor Mark's speaking at. It's very exciting. First conference in a couple years. We told him to make sure he puts the gay pole dancer stripper after Pastor Mark. If you don't get that joke, somebody in the comments will help you understand. We get into everything from the Epstein files to why Madami's socialistic plan is not working for New York. So buckle up, get ready. You're in for a great show today.
This is a fiscal crisis that was not created by working and middle-class New Yorkers. It should not be placed on their backs in order for the city to resolve it.
Mayor Zohran Mamdani repeatedly emphasized he does not want to raise property taxes on New Yorkers already struggling to afford their homes, nor dip into the city's rainy day fund. He's presenting state leaders with an ultimatum to help him fill the $5.4 billion hole in the city budget. Raise taxes on millionaires or corporations, or he'll have no choice but to raise those property taxes. The mayor was asked repeatedly about if New Yorkers would feel betrayed.
We're not talking about free buses. We're talking about dipping into the rainy day fund. We're not talking about taxing millionaires. We're talking about taxing working class people.
Well, I am talking about taxing millionaires. What we need to do is reckon with the structural nature of this and put ourselves back on the kind of footing that allows us to advance an agenda.
The budget gap is mainly due to ballooning rental assistance programs and spending to reduce class sizes in schools. The mayor says he's already working to find savings throughout city government. But budget observers like the Citizens Budget Commission call a wealth tax versus property tax debate a false choice.
Well, Pastor Mark and Stephen, I feel like we are just seeing that socialism works. We are just seeing a flourishing state, a flourishing city. It is beautiful what's happening in New York.
Everywhere socialism goes, it just absolutely works incredibly well. History proves it, and so it's so wise to continue the experiment. It's fantastic.
It is. And I'm curious, why doesn't the gospel teach socialism?
What's really wild is, so he's been in office how long?
Well, since January, so what are we, 7 weeks?
He's broke.
It's already ending. That was such a classic clip. I mean, you couldn't have written that back in December any better than what they just did there.
Yeah.
We're 7 weeks in and it's not working.
But it's not working. 7 weeks. Like, you could still get an annulment if this was a marriage. I mean,
maybe the city should ask for that.
So it's already the highest income tax rate for high earners. It's already 15% there.
So Seattle and New York have got socialistic mayors running on the same agenda, and they're both just breakneck speed trying to determine who can do insanity fastest. And so, yeah, in Seattle, they're looking at, within the city, going to 19% income tax, which would supersede New York.
Golly.
So right now, Seattle and New York, it's like, who can be the most drunk driver in America? Who can blow the highest blood alcohol level? I mean, it's wild. But this is what happens when you hire a guy who has no business experience whatsoever, and he's never run a company, he's never had payroll, never had cash flow, doesn't understand business whatsoever. You give him the biggest city in America, and then it's a sanctuary city, so you open it up, people come in. Number one, now you're driving up housing prices because it's a supply-demand situation. Now people can't afford housing, so now the government's going to subsidize housing. Now you've got people that have not financially contributed to the city, and they're needing schools and services, and they are draining and depleting the city. Mm-hmm. And all of this is just self-inflicted. And on top of it all, you've got a guy who's a socialist, which is a violation of the 8th commandment, thou shalt not steal. And if you own something and the government takes it, they are negating private property ownership. And through taxation, you are disobeying and defying God and the 8th commandment. And so this is just, you don't even need to believe in Jesus. You need to believe in math. You need to believe in history. You need to believe in reality. And if you do believe in God, you know that actually he'll never bless this because it's completely anti-Christ and it's against what the scriptures teach.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about this a little bit. It feels like the Islam Muslims, they're treating the liberals as useful idiots. And like we're destroying one of the most flourishing cities for the longest time. The stock market, it was the hub for immigration and for a lot of the financial system is in New York, and we're taking it and pushing all the wealthy businessmen and conservatives out. Trump Tower's there. He'd been there most of his life, and he can't be there now. What's behind all that? Why are we pushing out some of the best men in these cities?
It's interesting because as you bring up New York there, you have the two opposite perspectives of money. You've got Wall Street, you got the movie Greed,
Yep.
You have that idea, and then you swing all the way to the other side, and you have a completely different form of greed, which is government greed. And the clip started off by him saying that the middle class and the working class, they didn't create this problem. What he didn't go on to say is who did create the problem, which was the government itself. And then he went on to try to create more government solutions while not addressing the core issue, which he actually brought up. He said this is a structural problem. But by that, what he means is capitalism, not a structural problem of government overreach through theft.
Well, and for those that are Christians, so the discussion among younger progressives is rich versus poor, which is completely Marxist. And it's a debate that's atheistic in its origination. And I've said it for a long time, but there are four kinds of people in the Bible when it comes to money. There's righteous rich and righteous poor. There's unrighteous rich and there's unrighteous poor. And in the left, they automatically assume that rich people are unrighteous and poor people are righteous. You can have very righteous rich people. You've got guys like Abraham, who's very wealthy, ultimately, just because someone has wealth, they may have worked hard, they may have invested. This may be generational, obedience to God and inheritance. You can have very wealthy, very righteous people. You can have poor people that are very unrighteous.
Yep.
They're not working. They're dependent. They are not intending to get married and father their own children. And a lot of this I would put on the doorstep of fatherlessness, that ultimately when you have a community that doesn't have men, then all of a sudden to replace those men, you need a gigantic government. But the problem with the government is if the men aren't working, there's no one to tax to pay for the government to do the work that the men should be doing. And so ultimately, as a Bible-believing pastor, I see all of this as if Christianity was functionally in place, these problems would cease to exist. And so ultimately it's a spiritual issue. It's people who don't know our God and don't worship our God and don't believe in our God. And instead they either believe in Islam or they believe in Marxism, both of which are bankrupt ideologies. And I mean, if we're 7 weeks in, imagine what New York could look like in 4 years.
Well, we can't imagine. If you've been to Europe anytime lately, you probably can, right? In what and where this stuff and the trajectory of this stuff heads. And what you said a few moments ago, it's the exact opposite of the plan that God lays out in the Bible. And so they're really just living out their own sin, and they're going to see the destructive nature of it.
So what advice, you guys are both pastors, what advice would you give the people of New York, the people that are living there, maybe the faithful Christians that are still there?
Yeah, like our friend Mike Signorelli, who's there slugging it out. I mean, I'm just texting with him this week. He's in Gotham. He's trying to lead people to Jesus. He's in the fight, but man, alive, he's fighting gravity. Mm-hmm. And so part of it too is I'm at the age now where I'm a grandpa. And so I start to think about not what's going to work for me, but what's going to work for my grandkids. Mm-hmm. And you start to look at certain cities, Seattle, Portland, New York, Minneapolis, and you ask, okay, what is it going to be like in 20 years when your son, who's 2, Cowboy just, left the ranch here, in 20 years, let's say, when he goes to get married, at this trajectory, what does it look like for a family to buy a house, to have multiple children, maybe for mom to stay home with the kids and be primary caregiver? Is it a sustainable future? And so people will hang in there for a long time, but once it starts to rob your kids and grandkids of a viable future, I think as a man and a head of household, I think you have a decision to make, and that is, I need to leave for the sake of the future.
Yep.
And this is why a lot of the guys in the Bible, Paul, Jesus, Jeremiah, Elijah, certain dudes are single. Mm-hmm. And God sends those guys into impossible situations to have the head-on collisions. But, you can imagine the Apostle Paul or Elijah if they had a stroller with twins in it.
Yep.
I mean, it's not a viable life. It just isn't. And so once you get married and once you start thinking about generational legacy, it becomes really hard to justify staying in a place like this.
Mm-hmm. And if you're a pastor, you were a pastor in Seattle, and we were just back there. Like it's tough, and it's dark, and it's getting darker. What advice would you have for pastors to pray through their calling and figure out next steps for their family in trying to lead and shepherd and lead a flock? Because it doesn't seem like there's a sustainable future for people's kids in these places.
There aren't, and as they continue to increase not only like income tax but then property tax, if you're a head of household, you just reach a point where even if you love your city and you want to reach people for Christ, you can't afford it.
Well, we know a great gentleman up in Seattle, his property tax is now $2,000 a month. That's rent in Arizona.
Unlike a $600,000 house.
Uh-huh.
So if you bought that house, when interest rates were low a few years ago, that's your mortgage.
Totally.
And what that means is you actually never own your home or your land. The government does, and you're renting it from them in perpetuity.
And $2,000 is the floor. It's only going to go up from here. It doesn't ever go down.
That's why DeSantis is floating the possibility of trying to eliminate property taxes.
I think it would be wise.
Yeah. And so, if you're in a place like that and you're a pastor, reduce your debt, increase your security, have a place that is a bit of an ark for your family. And if need be, you may need at some point to live somewhere and come in for ministry. And that is like a missionary, but that is ultimately not your home for your family.
Yeah, 100%. And you're 45 miles south of Detroit, which is another one of the hubs we're really seeing this. What are you feeling? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, so we see as much of the Islam stuff as we see the socialism stuff. But I think with in particular the socialism stuff, to remind ourselves that this is an intentional plan.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. They're intentionally defunding the ability for the family to thrive. And so they're trying to ruin where mom can stay home. They're trying to destroy any ability to build wealth. I mean, if you talk to European brothers and sisters in Christ who are trying to fund gospel-centered style churches, they can't do it. Why? Because nobody has any money. And so you never own a home. You never get to build any wealth. You certainly have nothing to pass on to another generation. It is a targeted attack. You use things like taxation in order to bankrupt these people. And eventually you strip the gospel and churches out of these places. I think what you just said, Pastor Mark, is right on. If I'm a pastor in there, I just have to understand where I'm at.
Yeah.
Where are you at? You're in Babylon. And you can seek the welfare of the city. You're allowed to do that. They weren't allowed to leave. But when they were given the option to leave, they did. Yeah. And so both can be okay options. You just have to decide what you're going to do. But what you're probably not going to do if you stay in New York is have a financially sustainable ministry environment or leave anything to your kids because you're not going to have anything left.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that too, it is, I love cities, but at the end of the day, family is what matters, and like I did 2 decades of tour of duty in the CHOP, section of the People's Republic of Seattle. And if we would have stayed there, I know everybody's story is different. I know for a fact that our kids and grandkids would not have stayed there. Like Len is my son-in-law, and you wouldn't be there raising you wouldn't have your family raise your son there.
Because I wouldn't think my son will have my grandkids there. And that would be devastating if my son has to leave the state I'm raising a family in to go have his own kids. I want to be in a place where I see generations of future. Just looking at it, currently we're at around 5 million Muslims in the country, and that's looking to grow because they're putting more people in the future than Christians are.
They are. Yeah, be fruitful and multiply. They grabbed our verse.
So this is the point I was trying to make earlier is so the Muslims and Islam they're using the liberal agenda to get rid of America because the families can't flourish, but their families can, and they're just trying to outpace
they're really
us.
good at business.
Very good at business.
Very good at business. They build wealth. And they do it in ways where sometimes even can make us feel uncomfortable in certain tactics, but they're very intentional. We're going to build wealth. We're going to pass it down because it's going to be through economic means that we're going to take over. And they use the liberals to open up the door
Yeah.
Right? To allow them in. They use soft liberal language, and then they have a heyday.
Well, sometimes they amass wealth through corruption. And I know that sounds, bigoted, but just go to Minneapolis.
Yep.
You've got an entire subculture community that is Muslim, not assimilated, now is reportedly doing genital mutilation of their daughters, and whole sections of the town operating under Sharia law, operating in corruption and fraud to take from a nation that they've not contributed to. And at the end of the day, you could say diversity is our strength, but that diversity does not strengthen anything.
No. That's where, as a pastor myself, I'm just very concerned looking into the future that if pastors don't wake up to the problem and they don't start talking about politics, and we'll get into that later, we're going to have a situation on our hands in a generation or two where the Islam is planning for generations. And
so
we're worried about we can't plan for the next 7 weeks. The agenda is not working. It's killing America.
It's highly concerning.
It's highly concerning.
And, the pastors that are still arguing over Calvinism versus Arminianism, or speaking in tongues, or speaking in tongues, or traditional worship, or contemporary worship, is like you're on the cutting edge of the 1850s. You really need to catch up.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, wasn't there a survey that came out a couple of weeks ago? It might have been a couple months ago now, that one of the top concerns for evangelical moms was a discussion around Islam. And who's having this conversation? A handful of churches maybe across the country.
Very few.
But not nearly enough to handle a top issue from the very audience that we're supposed to be serving.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, too, the pulpit has been turned into previously largely psychological self-help principles for better living, not Christian worldview. And so Jesus really doesn't apply to politics, economics, cultural, social issues, marriage, gender, family. It's about, you having personal fulfillment or satisfaction or achievement. And it's like, well, Christ is more than a life coach, and the Bible has more than just, fortune cookie, altruisms to sort of motivate you until lunch. I mean, and so there's a diminished view of the dominion and sovereignty of God over all things. And it's a very small view of God.
It is.
And it's shameful in the pulpit. And two, a lot of the churches, like the governance is set up that the pastor has to stay out of trouble. Otherwise, he gets in trouble with the board, he gets in trouble with the denomination, he gets in trouble with the network. And so most pastors are very soft, they're very quiet, they're very weak. And as a result, their people are starving to death, and they have a lot of big questions. And if the church won't answer them, then where else do you go?
Well,
go ahead.
As you were talking there, it's a lot of that Hezekiah mindset. Well, I'm going to be okay. Screw the next generation. And so you have
so selfish.
It is. You have all these pastors. They've got their jobs. They've got their paychecks. And so why shake things up or speak the truth? Because I might lose my gig. I might lose my job. And what we did over the last 40 years is we took all of that self-help stuff and we threw it on a bunch of Christians who actually had been pretty well doctrinally trained. And so the church could stay strong for a while because they were strong. But then you give them 30 years of candy and the church gets weak.
Yep.
And so then to a weak church, the leftist agenda blows in, knocks it over just like that. The fact that we have to have a conversation around, is socialism biblical, is all the evidence that we need.
Most of the people will say it's the most loving your neighbor thing to do. Yeah.
Because they haven't been taught anything in the last 30 to 40 years of proper doctrine that would allow them to say, well, no, there's some pretty easy arguments against that socialism isn't biblical.
I mean, it was in Jesus's top 4 sermon rotation was money and finances and stewardship, and it's not in any of the pastors' top 4 anymore.
Yep. Or just read Genesis 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It makes it pretty clear.
100%.
Well, Pastor Mark here, wanting to thank our partners at Goldco for helping sponsor the Mark Driscoll Show. Over recent months and years, silver prices have increased, and they'd like you to be informed to help you determine the best place to put your wealth. So here's what they are offering, and you can go to right now, goldco.com/realfaith. Again, that's goldco.com/realfaith. And here's what they are offering: a free 2026 gold and silver kit, as well. In light of our nation's 250th birthday, they've got a limited time bonus offer. You'll get free gold or silver, free storage, and a free home safe with a minimum cash purchase. Again, they'd like to give these gifts to you, as well as information about precious metals, but especially silver. So again, go to goldco.com/realfaith.
So this week, just yesterday, an armed 21-year-old named Austin Tucker Martin drove into the secure perimeter of Mar-a-Lago carrying a shotgun and a gas can, and he was fatally shot after he raised his weapon. It wasn't well planned. Trump was in Washington at the time, and just tangentially, Ryan Routh, who tried to make an attempt on Trump in 2024, was sentenced to life plus 84 months. I don't know what the extra 84 months are for, but for his assassination attempt. But we're seeing young men attack Trump and ruin their entire life. I mean, this child lost his life. You have a son about this age. And I mean, oh my gosh, if you got that call that your son decided to go try to make a statement. And
this is where you're seeing mental health. I mean, this is a I don't know the guy obviously, but like this is a mental health issue. When you read something on the internet and you say, I'm going to grab a rifle and a gas can and walk into Mar-a-Lago, you have mental health. I mean, this is death by cop. This is not a tactical plan. This is just emotional knee-jerk response to somebody who has been online too much.
100%. And it's really interesting, the media response. CNN covered it for 18 seconds and no other major show touched it. And it was an assassination attempt on the president. So we're just seeing the left kind of accepts the violence and things like we saw the horrible response to the Charlie Kirk assassination and then the attempts on Trump's life. Very, very sad. But yeah, we're seeing young men just devastate their lives with mental health, demonic issues, the trans agenda, all that, where they will die for this cause. And it does not seem rational or grounded.
Even a lot of the school shooters, they're all trans. I mean, there's a high percentage that are trans, and we know that. Mm-hmm. And even the guy who shot up, the hockey match recently, I mean, he's trans. I mean, it's mental health, it's demonic confusion, and sometimes it's poisoning of the body with hormones, and then people act out in insane ways. But we're in a culture that's saying we cannot say that mental health is bad. We need to affirm it. It's like, no, if we really love people, we need to say, you have mental health issues and you need some help. We don't need to value you. We need to help you.
Yeah. Where would you draw the line, Pastor Mark, between a demonic issue and a mental health issue? Like, how do you discern that?
So it's a very, very blurry line. And so, a human being, you've got a body, you've got a soul, you've got the material and the immaterial part of your existence. And these are not compartmentalized. You're one person in two parts. And so, like the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, it mentions the human soul 0 times. Mm-hmm. It does not recognize that you have an immaterial portion of your existence. Well, that means that all you're doing is treating half of a human being with any condition. That's not actually helping them. So only Christianity and Christian worldview and prayer and regeneration and ministry of the Holy Spirit, those are the only things that really actually help a whole person.
Yeah.
And so, but where is that line? It's very, 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 very blurry. Mm-hmm. I mean, when people are hearing voices, is that them having negative self-talk, or is that demonic? I mean, if they're hearing, to kill someone, to harm themselves, to do evil, like, is that just that they have a negative self-esteem and a poor inner dialogue, or is that literally that Satan is speaking to them, that the demonic is actually communicating with them? Mm-hmm. And again, if you talk about this in the mainstream with psychologists that only treat the body, they think it's crazy, but you're starting to see people that have genuine demonic manifestations. and they believe that what they're doing is actually noble, right, and good, and it's just pure evil. It's murderous, victims everywhere. I mean, even with the assassination, of Charlie Kirk, a friend of mine, I mean, it just seems too like a lot of the violence just keeps coming from the left.
Yeah. Why do you feel like the left is inspiring political violence and hatred towards the right?
Well, so if someone is wrong, you disagree with them. If someone is evil, to be moral and just, you have to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it used to be that Christianity was seen as dumb or wrong or irrelevant or it works for you. Christianity today is now seen as immoral, unjust. The God of the Bible is a moral monster. It's patriarchal. It's chauvinistic. It's anti-woman. It's anti-gay. It's anti-trans. Therefore, it's oppressive. And so if the Bible and the worldview that it provides is evil, you are morally obligated to war against it and stop it. Mm. And so what you're seeing on the hard left is the attack on Christian values and beliefs is what is called justice.
Mm. Gosh.
And leftist movements have always gone toward violence. Mm-hmm. They always do. It's our political structure and our justice structure that we've had up until this point that has stopped it from going further. Mm. But left-wing movements going violent is not anything new in human history. Yeah. This has always gone this way. You never go a little left. And so you open up the door, you're just going to keep walking down it.
So do you think that as a pastor, I mean, we pastor churches, that pastors and churches should really be taking a hard, serious look at security checkpoints, just making sure the houses of worship are safe and protected for God's people to be together?
Yeah, and I'm sure both of our churches have pretty robust security plans, and I know people do. But, I mean, it is part of our obligation to keep the flock safe, and this is a new a new frontier in this way. Fortunately, these things are still relatively rare, but they're increasing, and so I think we have to increase at that same rate.
Yeah, but the average church is a very soft target.
Yes, the average church.
The average church.
Yes. And I think, churches like ours, where you're more outspoken, where you're speaking the truth, those types of things, obviously security should be high. And I would also imagine that churches like ours too, that we're taking this stuff seriously, and knowing our people are at risk.
Yeah, I think even the churches that you got the gun-toting alpha males, we all think we're going to respond well.
Yeah.
But without training in a shooting, I don't know that most Christians are going to respond like they think they're going to. We watched that in Texas a few years ago. Guy drove into the church, got out, shot a bunch of people, including the pastor's daughter, got back in his truck and left. In Texas, everyone's like, oh, in Texas, we all got guns. Everyone freezes, and you fall to the level of your training in a moment like that. So I think you can't overemphasize enough that churches need to run drills, do training, be equipped, and equip their men to handle situations. You've got a good friend, John Lovell, that does some of this training.
He's got a full curriculum for churches.
A free resource.
They can have it all for free. We could put that in the comments.
Absolutely.
And John's a wonderfully fantastic man.
Yeah. So in moments like that, we fall to our level of training, and churches need to take it serious, not just, we all have guns, because most men freeze in moments like that. And we don't want to. We want to be the men that protect women and children.
Yep. Well, seeing what just happened even in, I think it was in Minneapolis, where people just walk in, took over a whole service, and so they shut the service down and all the Christians left. I'm like, you just surrendered dominion of your church. Well, the pastor came out with a good statement later and seems like a decent guy and all that. I get it. But like, man alive, you've got to have a plan, and the plan can't be, we'll let them take over and then we'll go meet and come up with a plan.
Yeah, I mean, if a shepherd's plan for their flock was, the wolves come, let me, here's the sheep. Like, that's not a shepherd's heart. So shepherds need to protect their flock in every sense of that word. We're not seeing pastors ready for it. And I think people need to dial up to 10 on the seriousness of security of their church. And you do trainings with guys. So you're equipped, so they're equipped. So
yeah, you need concentric circles, security perimeter checkpoints. You need people that are trained. You need people on comms so they can communicate. You need the right technology. And if you're in an urban area, hire an off-duty cop, put their patrol car out front, put them out there with a vest on, and all the good guys are like, glad to see you, and all the bad guys are like, I guess we're not going here.
Yep.
We're in the country and we do that. Well, we got the car parked out right in front of the church every single week, right? That armed guy
Yeah.
in his uniform sitting out there. It's also a unique and new opportunity for a lot of guys who are in military or in any kind of policing, anything like that, to serve in their church.
100%.
And now they get a chance to do it, and they do it in a way that they know how to do.
100%. Yeah, that's a really good word. It's you get out of the military and you want to find a purpose, and that's a huge need. And if your church doesn't have security, go offer to the senior pastor. If you're out of the military and you're trying to find a way to serve and you don't fit on the greeting team, ask your pastor if you can start a security team, and go watch Pastor John Lovell's courses on it and build a structure and protect your church. It's going to get more and more important.
Yeah, because and I'll close with that. I mean, part of it is we're only responsible for that which God has given us dominion for.
Yes.
So, like, I don't have dominion over Mar-a-Lago.
No.
Like, that's not my responsibility. But, like, your church, my church, whatever our dominion is, that's our sphere of responsibility, and we need to exercise dominion. We need to secure the areas that God has given us authority and oversight. And if everybody does that, we'll start covering more of the gaps. And if we don't, we've got a real problem. But, like, I know you can go through Bible college, you can go through seminary. I know for a fact there's nothing on security. There's nothing on conflict. There's nothing on PR. There's nothing. I mean,
Like all the things a shepherd should do.
Right.
it's not part of the training. And so you walk out, you're like, I lived on a secure environment, Bible college or seminary campus.
Surrounded by beta males.
Yeah, they had. No, I just was told to just get up and teach the Bible. It's like, well, I'll tell you right now, if you don't know how to do more than that, you are a risk to your people.
100%. 100%. Speaking of safety, security, and making arrests, really, the UK has made the first arrest in the Epstein files. So let's check out who they have arrested.
State, the police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation and development on this story involving the Epstein files and all the allegations that have been swirling around about Andrew over the many years, from Virginia Giuffre, now sadly deceased, and since then, and certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files as released in the last few weeks. But the police have arrived at Sandringham Estate this morning, where Andrew has made his new home. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is. He has been arrested by the police. Of course, the brother of the current king, the second son of our late Queen Elizabeth. This is an extraordinary development. Those of us who've been talking an awful lot about establishment cover-ups and lack of, should we say, interest by the police in what are very, very serious allegations against Andrew. Perhaps pleased that that pressure has finally been put on the police, and they have done the job of actually looking into these issues seriously. Must bear in mind, of course, that the Prince has not been charged with any crime at this point, and he has always denied any wrongdoing in relation to any of the allegations.
So first royal arrest in 400 years. It seems like the UK is going to make an example out of him, and kind of an example for the entire world on how to handle this. What are your guys' thoughts just initially seeing that?
That's a bad birthday, for one.
Really bad.
I hope that's not...
Especially at 66.
66th birthday, that's bad. It does seem like they're trying to make an example. I think that, but an example in a good way is a good thing.
Yes.
And so let's hope that it is an example that other people will take seriously. And it looks like maybe in our own country, we need to take it a little bit more seriously.
It feels like in our own country, we're not really sure what to do with it. And the people want stuff done with it, but the government doesn't know what to do with it because it would strip out most of the system if they dealt with it. Pastor Mark, what are your thoughts seeing that?
So this is one of those issues that was kind of out on the fringe and conspiracy theorists, and then just continually is moving right into the center and is undeniable. That's where we're at right now.
Yep.
And what's really shocking about it all is you just don't know how far it goes. There's continuing to be data dump. Now we find that there's additional data. The amount of data this man kept, or those with him kept, is shockingly wild for the amount of the audacity of the crimes and evils that they're committing, and then to sort of capture and retain all of that is breathtaking. Usually when you're that evil and maniacal, you try to hide it, not to revisit it and to record it. And for the average person, it seems to me like what's driving this is like, if there's not moral outrage for this, then what is there moral outrage for? I mean, my friend Steve Dace, he said, you know, Epstein was, these are guys that treated children like chew toys, you know, and it's just, it's a violence. And when it's a violence against women, but especially underage girls, that are being exploited because of vulnerability, because of poverty or some sort of need. And then you have men who are in positions of extraordinary power and wealth who are gaming the system to do that which is unspeakable and diabolical, and then for nothing to happen. I mean, to the best of my knowledge in the U.S., we don't have an arrest.
No.
Nobody. Now, there's certain guys that are like, oh, I got caught saying I like the rape videos, so I'll sell my company.
Yeah.
And then retire, which is like, okay, that's it? Like you get
not a pay penance moment. It's
like
justice.
Like you cash out and go to Belize. I mean, that's not, there's no justice in that. And so what you're seeing in this, we're made in the image and likeness of God with a conscience. And even if you don't believe in God, and even if you don't like, you know, law and order, when you see evil, the conscience in you appeals to some external standard of right and wrong, and you want justice.
Yep.
So even now, the average person is like, I don't believe in God, and I believe in right and wrong, but this is just evil.
Yep.
And how come we're not doing something? So what you're seeing here, people made in God's image, when it's so obvious that it's undeniable, that's where there's this public outrage and outcry.
Yeah.
And, you know, I voted for Trump, and I'm glad that we have the president that we do, but the administration's handling of this is not endearing them to their base.
No.
And it's not building trust with the base.
Yeah.
It's like if this is an issue that doesn't get some attention and traction, then what does? I mean, what other kind of horrific abuse could there be that would move those in power to expose it and to bring to justice those who are responsible for it?
Yeah, and you made the parallel a couple weeks ago. Jeffrey Epstein, Ahab, his wife Jezebel, the seeking of power and control through sexual sin and deviance.
And politics and money.
100%. And you look across this, I mean, they've got princes and presidents and like some of the most powerful men in the world are named in this list. There's a lot of influence and power in the political world and donors and all that stuff. I'd be really curious what's happening behind the scenes to keep this stuff suppressed and not dealt with, from favors being called in and pressure being put on and threats happening. Like they seem so mixed in with so many different buckets of people, from the UK to donors in the country to presidents to I mean, even like this week, I think it was last week, it came out that Trump put the FBI onto Epstein back in the early 2000s. Was like, this guy's a bad dude, but that hasn't come out till now. So there's like, why is it such a slow drip of information?
And why is it a denial of information and then a dumping of information?
It's very weird.
So, and then at some point, you know, you don't trust the news anymore, and you wonder what's conspiratorial and what's actually factual. But like they're saying, you know, now there's storage lockers across the country that have more evidence that needs to be seized, and there's a ranch in New Mexico that they don't know anything about, and it's got, you know, a chimney coming out of it, and it may have an incinerator for the girls that they murdered, and
Oh my goodness.
you could have could have murder, you know, and body dumping, and you're just
We see Madami's mom there with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, he's just like, well, hey, could we please make this a priority and just like
Deal with
get
it.
to the bottom of it and let us know like exactly what this is?
So
it opens the category of the demonic. Like, this is just demonic. It's satanic. This is evil. This is beyond a human being in their sinful fallen nature doing some disgusting things. Like, this is hell come up for a visit.
Do you feel like does the Republican side have a chance for re-election in midterms and in 2028 if they don't deal with this?
Well, so yeah, with the midterms coming, I mean, if you want to pull anybody in the middle, the issue is the economy.
Yep.
And it's inflation, it's affordability, it's housing. Those are the issues. They're very practical. If you're looking at the far right voter base, it is issues of justice and things like the Epstein files are like, hey, we voted you in and you said you would deliver. Where's the results?
Yep.
And there it's trust and credibility. And in leadership, it's always down to trust. Like, can I trust you? If I appoint you to do something, will you freaking do it? And if not, then you no longer have my support.
Well, voter midterms are always about voter turnout. And I think that's the big danger here.
Yeah, 34% of Christians are registered to vote.
But they actually do vote. About 50% are registered to vote.
Okay.
34% actually vote.
Yeah, and I don't know when they vote, if that's in presidentials or what.
It's almost once every 4 years.
Yeah.
They skip the midterm.
Yes, and midterms, again, are all about voter turnout. And so when you're at the top, you're asking questions of the president, you're asking questions of the attorney general, you're asking questions of the FBI director. You have to think that somewhere down the line that suppresses voter turnout in midterm elections. And so we have important congressional elections, important senator elections, important gubernatorial elections.
Very important.
That are going to dictate what the rest of the next 2 years look like and what Trump is able to do before 28. And so if they don't handle this stuff and conservative base, the one you were just talking about that loves justice, doesn't turn out, then you could be handing the House, you could be handing Senate seats that you're not going to get back for 6 years.
Well, in states like Arizona, attorney generals, governors.
Yep.
We learned during COVID that your attorney general and your governor are incredibly important because you could be living in one of two Americas.
Yep.
And so those midterm elections are crucial. So like for us in Arizona, like right now, we have a clown show for a governor and an attorney general. And if we don't fix the problem, then we're just a suburb of California.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we see similar in Ohio. We got a gubernatorial election where our COVID doctor is running on the Democratic ticket. She basically just wants to bring us back to 2020, right? And then on the other side, we have Vivek Ramaswamy, who's running for the Republican side. And then we have a senatorial election that Ohio just won back. And if we hand that back over to the left, that's 6 years then of congestion in the Senate. And so it's an important midterm, like every election seems to be important now. And I do think this issue they need to figure something out.
Well, howdy, Pastor Mark here, wanting to thank our partners at Goldco for sponsoring the Mark Driscoll Show. And if you have been watching the news, it's a complicated time indeed. Despite adjustments, gold and silver are still up. And we know that AI is still gobbling up silver at a rapid rate. Our friends at Goldco would love to get information in your hands to help you make informed decisions. So they've got a special for you. Head over to goldco.com/realfaith. Again, that's goldco.com/realfaith. And this month, they're celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a limited time bonus offer. You can get up to 10% free gold or silver, plus free storage and a free home safe with a minimum cash purchase. All of that, as well as more information, just go to goldco.com/realfaith to learn more. That's goldco.com/realfaith.
I think that brings us to our final segment on pastors being involved in politics, pastors preaching truth and getting bold and courageous. We're seeing a world that's getting dark. Our country's getting dark fast. Feels like we could be a generation away from, this thing failing, this big experiment of America failing, which was founded on great values, founded on freedom of religion, founded by some really good men that believed that we could do it a different way. And we are following into the demonic, it feels, very, very quickly. And pastors are just watching it go. And some of them are jumping right in and supporting the way we're going. So what is a pastor's role? Should they be talking about politics in the pulpit?
Yes.
All right. We're done.
Yeah, they absolutely should. But I think we have to ask the question, why don't they?
Yeah.
Because we can say yes, but we have to understand the reason they don't. Sometimes it is just bad doctrine.
Yeah.
And those, you can sit down, you can talk with people, you can work through some scripture, and that might change some minds. But really, I think what is deeper than that is because they have bought a lie. The megachurch era dominated the last 40 years of American evangelicalism, and I think it died in 2020. But its leg is kind of still twitching. Right. And so it still has an influence over people, and people still think that that's the era that we're in.
Yep.
And so they're following the old playbook, and the old playbook says, don't talk about politics.
Yeah.
It's the quickest way to ruin your church. What we need to remember now is, one, that's actually statistically not true. I think younger generations are craving this.
80% of churchgoers want their pastor to talk about it.
Well,
but
that
they
was
won't.
why Charlie Kirk was a generational phenomenon. He's like, I love Jesus, and I'm willing to talk about cultural, political issues. And young people, especially young men, were like, praise God, we were hoping someone would do this.
And we saw this big influx in the aftermath of the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk of young men showing up to church, and very few churches kept those
Saying
young
or
men.
doing anything.
Yeah.
We saw a 25% influx in 2 weeks, and they did not leave.
Most churches, they left. Yours, they stayed. Yours, they stayed. A good friend, Ryan Visconti, he captured that growth because he said the things the young men needed to hear, which is what Charlie was saying, which was faith and politics. You can't separate them. You can't separate them. Why are so many pastors trying to separate them?
Well, again, because they've been trained.
Yeah.
Because they think that this is the right way to do church.
Yep.
Some of them really do just believe a lie that to not separate them, they're alienating the unbeliever.
Yep.
And so they're believing a lie. Others of them, I think we're seeing this more and more. They're actually just leftists. And they don't want to be exposed as leftists because their churches are still predominantly funded by conservatives. And one of the areas of Christianity that is probably bugging me the most right now are the upper middle class conservatives who are still funding these weak or woke churches. It is time to leave, to find the Clear Truth Church in your area that is actually speaking what needs to be spoken and start funding those things.
Yeah, and for me, Len, I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't grow up in evangelicalism. I really don't fit. I've gotten exited, which is fine. It's great. But I mean, I'm a Bible teacher, so like I'm in Exodus, which is like my 40th book of the Bible that I preached or taught through. And I think a lot of it too is a lack of, I'll just call it a lack of expositional Bible teaching. If you're going through a book of the Bible, there are some issues you're just going to have to deal with. Like I'm in Exodus. Early on, why does God crush Egypt? They want to kill the children and deny religious liberty for worship. And God's like, I'm pro-life and I'm pro-religious freedom, so I'm crushing Egypt. And I'm sure the Pharaoh would have said, man, I wish God stayed out of politics. He just crushed my economy, destroyed my nation, and drowned my army. It felt rather political to the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get into the Ten Commandments, which is where I'm at right now. It's like, don't take innocent life. Well, we have to talk about the unborn because it's the leading cause of death in America.
Yep.
You know, it talks about adultery and it talks about the sanctity of marriage and the establishing of family. And it's like, well, then that has a lot of political implications. You go over to the issue of, you know, private property ownership. Don't steal. Well, like that negates socialism and communism. And so if you just preach through books of the Bible and actually deal with the reality, you end up having to explain in a biblical worldview things. So like, and even the Ten Commandments, they're given between Israel being occupied and Egypt being exited. And God gives the Ten Commandments because they're going to start a nation. And he's like, okay, here's how it starts. First, God is over government. Number two, we rule through law so that there's justice under the law. And number three, the laws need to promote life and marriage and family and private property ownership. And God's like, those are the foundational elements for a nation.
Yep.
And if you say, well, I teach the Ten Commandments as your personal moral piety, it's like it was actually given to a few million people to found a nation. And so to me, I could argue all day. I could argue from Nehemiah, who works for the government. I could work for Joseph, you know, who works for the government. I could talk about Daniel, who serves multiple terms in multiple nations and political entities. I mean, we could just do this all day. And at the end of the day, much of the backdrop of the Bible is God versus government, all the way down to Jezebel and Ahab and issues in Israel. And so to me, the people are saying, just preach the gospel. It's like, well, teach the Bible. And if you teach the Bible, you're going to deal with issues that are culturally, politically implicated because they're in violation of the Word of God. And so to me, this is do you believe in the inerrancy of Scripture? Are you a Bible teacher and actually willing to connect the text to the context and teach worldview? And if not, go get another freaking job because that's the job.
Yep. And a lot of times, a lot of the stories you're coming up, those guys are coming up against demonic other religions.
100%.
And America's facing that, and pastors aren't doing anything about it other than, well, we should be accepting and love those people. And I mean, I've been doing a bit of a deep dive on Islam, and like Muhammad belongs on the Epstein list.
He married
a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
In his 50s. So you're in your 50s. You marry a 6-year-old and consummate when she's 9.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the founder of the fastest growing religion in the world right now.
Yes.
Who's held up as the picture of the perfect man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, pastors, this one's not hard.
Yep.
People are outraged on the Epstein list. Muhammad, like the founder of Islam,
Yes.
openly admitted, he did this, and pastors aren't saying a damn thing.
No.
There's a few great people, the Cedras, who we'll see later, and a few people that are really shouting it from the rooftops. Hey, guys, you don't realize what's coming for America right now. They're putting more people in the future. Pastors are like, here's the 4 ways to live a better life right now. It's like, well, no, we're not going to have a life to live in a couple decades.
When a lot of it is, honestly, it's the failure of my generation of pastors. They almost all went woke or soft woke. And they all adopted third way evangelicalism, which is, don't go to the right, don't go to the left, stay in the middle. And the problem is, well, what about when the center moves far to the left? Are you still in the middle? Because what was going to be far left 20 years ago is now center today. Like today, we're not talking about Republicans and Democrats. We're talking about socialists. Like we've added a whole nother category to the far left.
Bernie Sanders is close to the middle now.
I mean, it's wild. And so, but it is a generation of pastors my age that are now running Bible colleges and seminaries and platforms and publishing houses, and they are freaking worthless. They are worthless cowards, and they're failing young men, and young men are needing to go into ministry, and the best guys are not coming out of Bible colleges and seminaries. They're coming out of the military. They're coming out of law enforcement. They're guys who've been on the street and see the reality of a failed worldview and are willing to have conflict and battle. But my generation is a damnable failure for pastoral leadership. And most of them, what they're doing today is it's actually laughable. I mean, the sermon series, the pulling of all the punches, the neglecting of all of the issues, and then the smarmy white knight virtue signaling on social media. It is nauseating.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed of most of the guys that I started in ministry with. I won't name them, but they're shameful.
They are. They truly are. So to a little bit of the solution, the reason Stephen's out is you're speaking at a conference for the first time in a couple of years.
I don't leave home anymore. Your conference is the only event I'm going to in like 2 years.
We're glad you are.
So if you are going to have a pole dancer, like a gay pole dancer, after
He said we have to do it after.
After him.
Please do.
So one of the reasons he's speaking there is because you're making a difference, and that's why he's going to go travel and do that.
I'm going to Ohio in March.
That's the labor right there. I know.
There's nobody going that way from Scottsdale.
You're the only one.
Yeah. So tell us about your ministry. Tell us about Clear Truth. Like, what is the mission? What are you seeing that the world needs today?
Well, Clear Truth has always been about the unfiltered Word of God. And in the last era of American evangelicalism, you could hide under statements like, well, if the text brings it up, I'll talk about it. Because if you only pick topical sermon series,
you never hit the text.
Never bring it up.
Totally.
And so then you don't have to do anything controversial. And so growing up in the megachurch era, kind of growing up in ministry, I sat right in that. And I went to all the conferences. I heard all of the talks and, Leadership Summit, everything else. And it was always about church growth, church growth, church growth. And church growth isn't bad. I love it when my church grows. I think we all do. But how you obtain that church growth really matters. And we sit in a time where we need a retraining of America's pastors. And we also need to provide content for the everyday believer that isn't woke. In any of our churches, you can still have good, faithful followers of Christ running to content from the last 10 to 20 years that is subtly moving them to the left. And so we need a replacement there. We also need to stop perpetuating the problem. We can't keep planting churches under the old mindset. Yeah. The old mindset that was transplanted through a lot of the leaders that Pastor Mark was just talking about. If we keep planting those style of churches, we're never going to solve the problem. Yeah. And so Clear Truth was an attempt to begin to push things back in the other direction. Yeah. To challenge churches to stand for truth and to proclaim the unfiltered Word of God and to begin to look at church through a new era and a new lens.
It's awesome. That's awesome. And Pastor Mark, you do something similar, training, equipping pastors, trying to make a difference right now.
Yeah, and again, I mean, if you're planting under an existing denomination or network, the odds are you're getting resources, but you're also not getting good advice on how to actually succeed. I mean, I come from the future, doing 20 years duty in the chop zone in downtown Seattle. Like, all I know is conflict and head-on collisions and being controversial and getting in trouble. And the new pastor has just got to know that that is the reality. That used to be a bright blue dot is now most of American culture. And even if they don't live in your town, they're going to find you online and they're going to give you hell there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so one way or another, the fight is coming to you. And
if you're not controversial right now, if you're not making some noise, you might not be true to the gospel.
Well, that's what I tell our people all the time. I said, you're going to hear, hey, your pastor's controversial. And my response to our people is ask, how come your pastor is not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if right now, two of the leading cultural forces shaping or trying to shape the paradigm of the future is Marxism and Islam, and the guy who believes in Jesus and teaches the Bible doesn't get in any trouble, I wonder if he's doing his job.
Mm-hmm. To what? Controversial to what? To the Word of God. All I have to do is preach.
What Romans 1.
Absolutely. If I just talk about what I learned in the church in the 90s, all of a sudden I'm controversial. And I hate this line that people always say, well, you just moved that way because you wanted to grow. You moved that way. No. By being biblically faithful, people respond. Hungry people will find food. Yep. And they are tired of being taught the lie, of getting these sugar-candied sermons. And so they're going to find the church in their town that's actually preaching the Word of God. And we have an entire generation of young men who are craving this, and an incredible opportunity to actually disciple them, that their church engagement and their discipleship is beyond just serve, give, and make sure you're in a group. Yeah, those are good things. That's a small fraction of what it looks like to be a godly man, and we have an opportunity now to train this generation to do that.
Yeah. I think what you talked about earlier, that upper middle class conservative person that's just sitting in a woke church and paying their dues and feeling some status. It feels like maybe a little bit like the Pharisees were in the Bible to Jesus, of like, they didn't like Jesus. He was really controversial, and he bucked the system because he was biblical and he taught the real gospel. And pastors that stay true to that are controversial, but in the exact right way. And
what are you getting in trouble for?
Yeah. He constantly got in trouble he got killed by religious people. So thank you, both of you men, for standing firm and teaching the Bible. That's unfortunately very rare nowadays.
Tell me a little bit about the conference as we close. Like, what are you working on? What are you hoping to do? What am I getting into? What do I need to prepare for?
Any openers that you should know about?
None of those. This conference has always been about what we stole this term, we commandeered it, post-denominationalism. And what we mean by that is not that denominations are bad. Some can be, but not necessarily. What we mean is that we are in an era now where, as Christians, we have to unify around core doctrine. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned this earlier. If we're still arguing about Calvinism and Arminianism, cessationism and continuationism, we are deaf to what is going on around us. Our people don't need that, and our churches certainly don't need to be so caught up in that we are forgetting that they're transing our kids and or aborting them in the womb. And so there's a bigger battle for us to be fighting. Mm-hmm. And so at our conference, all 3 years we've done it here, you're going to see a variety of speakers. And we have yourself, we have Doug Wilson, Rob McCoy, Frank Turek, David Engelhardt. I mean, you're across the spectrum of American evangelicalism there. But what do these guys have? They're not woke and they're not heretics. And so that's kind of our box. We want those who are brothers in Christ, who are willing to put some of these doctrinal things behind us and say, let's focus on the fact that once we restore truth to the public square, then we can start arguing about our favorite topics again and which church planting organization is best. But in the meantime, we need to band together and we need to fight the battle together.
Yeah.
So that's what the conference has always been about.
Okay. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to going. I've never been at a Christian nationalist event. This will be exciting.
I know you officially are one.
Yeah, am I?
I think so.
I don't really go on the internet, so I don't know.
Yeah, we don't like to throw.
It's better than being an atheistic globalist. I mean, if you got to
for sure,
you got to pick one.
It doesn't generally end well. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in for the Mark Driscoll Show. Our call to action today is we're giving away a pickup truck this week. Actually, a 1974 K5 Blazer. Picture here. That thing is sweet, and it is ending this Saturday. Our giveaway ends, and between now and then, you are 5x entries. For every $1 you give, it's 5 entries. Guys, I would get in this. There's less people in this giveaway than you'd think. So you very well could win this thing. Text truck to 99383. That's truck to 99383. And you can be entered to win. And we'll see you guys next week for a great show.